Okay, so let us begin. Last time we talked about Gaussian elimination and then Gaussian elimination with partial pivoting, and then we talk about three types of solutions, and then the condition for those three types, right? So no solution, infinitely many solution, and unique solution case. So that is what you learn in chapter 1. So today what we are going to learn is we are going to start looking at chapter 2. Right, chapter 2, that is error analysis. Right, so this is called error analysis. So okay, so this is the common problem we will have in any kind of numerical computation, right? So because the computers has limited range of computer limitation, right? So because of the computing limitations computers might have, right, which is known as round off techniques, which you learn in numerical analysis second year, right? In the second year AMM 204, you learn about that in the first chapter, right? So talking about floating point, fixed point, rounding, chopping, and things like that. So because of those kind of calculations, we see that the numerically computed solution may not be exactly equal to the real solution. Right? So it is always considered as an approximation for x. Right? So in this case, because there is a difference between the real solution and the computed solution, we define the error right. So the difference between the real solution and the computed solution is known as the error, right? So this is called error, right? So obviously you know that if this is the error, right, you don't really know the error in a real problem, right? So because when you are solving a system, you actually don't know the real value, right? Or real solution. You just have only x hat, and by the nature of the computation, you know that it is just an approximation but not the exact value. So we need to look for a different mechanism to estimate this error, right? Right, so because obviously in a real problem you don't know the error or you don't know the exact solution. So in that case you don't have exact solution, so you don't know how to find the error, right? So if you can find the error, then you can always find the exact solution. That is not the problem, right? So because of this problem, right, so we have to find something else which might help us to estimate the error, right? So we call it residual. Right, so we define the residual in this form, right? So ax minus ax hat, which is basically because ax is b, the right hand side vector b minus ax hat, right? So that means if you want to compute the residual, right, so you have to look for a difference between the right hand side and the right hand side you get when you substitute the computed value or the approximation. So this you can always compute because you know b is given, right? You know a, you know x. So you can always compute residual, right? Okay, so because this a, b, and x are known, you can always compute residual, right? So then you know the following things, right? So right, so first thing, if r is 0, then the real solution and the computed solution are exactly same, right? So in this case, error is 0, right? Similarly, you know that, right? So right? So you know that if the residual is reduced, made smaller, then error can also be reduced, right? So this is how you can estimate the error, right? So if you want to estimate the error or if you want to reduce the error, you try to reduce the residual, right? So let us look at an example. Sorry. Let me change a little bit. Right, so here is the system, right? So right, so here is the example. Given a system of differential linear equations, right? 1, 1, 1, 2, x1, x2 is equal to 0.2.02, 3.03. Right? So suppose that you have a computed solution x hat as 1, comma 1. So obviously you know that this is not the exact solution, right, by just looking at the problem. So they want you to find the residual, right? So if you want to find the residual, you can easily find it. Right, so R is B minus AX hat. So your B here is 2.02, 3.03 minus AX hat 1, 1, 1, 2, X hat is 1, 1. So that turned out to be 0.02 and 0.03. Okay, so if you calculate this, you can see that the residual is 0.02 and 0.03. Right? So now what's happened, what we are going to look at is, since we can find the residual, we need to look a way to improve this solution. So now you know this is an approximation. So this is not exactly the same solution. This is slightly different from the original solution. So we may have to improve these results to get to a real solution. So that process is called iterative improvement. So what we are going to do is we are going to improve the results. Yeah, after this lectures, tomorrow I will upload the video in the YouTube, so no problem. So somebody says there is raining in some places and they have internet problem. So those people don't need to worry. I will upload the video in the YouTube tomorrow, all right? So you can look at it. So you don't need to worry about missing a class, right? Right. So now iterative improvement. So what we are going to do is to this. Right, so you start with the initial approximation which is given here, right? So in this example, this is the real computed solution, right? So then, right? So this is what we do. This is an algorithm which help us to improve the result, right? So what we do is we start with the initial guess or initial approximation which you obtain by using Gaussian elimination. Or suppose it is given in this example, it is given, right? So then what you do is you find R, right? For every approximation you can find an R, right? So R is B minus AXI, right? So that means AX naught in this case. And if you find R, then you can solve the system AE is equal to R, right? So you can solve the system AE is equal to R, right? So when you solve the system AE is equal to R, right? You can get a solution for that system, right? So that is known as EI, right? So then what you do is you update that EI, the xi minus 1 by updating it, right? And then, right, so you stop this algorithm. Right, so you can continue this algorithm until you get R is equal to 0, right? So in that case, when R is equal to 0, you know you have an exact solution. Right? So for the same example, I am going to do the algorithm once, right? So example, I will do it again. Right? So here is the problem: 1, 1, 1, 2, right? X1, X2 is equal to 2.02, 3.03, right? You know that X hat is this 1, 1. Okay, so what you do? So you set according to the algorithm, you set X naught is equal to this, right? So you can name this as X naught. So in this case, you find R, right? So R is B minus AX naught, right? So R is b minus ax naught. And so that you already find, right? You know that. So that is 0.02 and 0.03. Because I already found it, I am writing it again, right? So without showing the verb. So this one has done here, right? So next, after finding R, I need to solve the system, right? So I need to solve A, right? So 1, 1, 1, 2, right? E, again name is as E1, E2 is equal to R, 0.02, 0.03. Right. So you can apply the Gaussian elimination again, right? Or if you already have LU factorization, you can use the LU factorization as well, right? So no issues, you can do, right? So whatever the method is, now you know how to solve the system. So you have this, right? 1, 1. If you apply Gaussian elimination, no pivoting, nothing, right? So when you apply Gaussian elimination, second row minus first row, right? So when you do that, you get 1, 1, 0, 1, even E2 is equal to 0.2, 0.1. So if you solve this by back substitution, so let me use different notation for E, right? So let me use y, okay, y1 by 2. Right, so y1 by 2 I am using. So my E is this. So you know y2 is 1, 0.01 and y1 is 0.01. So my E is this, or E1 is this 0.01, 0.01. Right? So according to the algorithm, I solve this system and get an approximation. So I get this E1 as 0.01, 0.01. So then I update. And then I say x1 is equal to x0 plus E1. So I know x0, that is 1, 1 plus this 0, 1, 0.01. So that is 1.01, 1.01. Okay, so this completes the first step. Right? Then you go to the next step. Next step again, you start finding R. Right? So step 2 I am writing. So this is step 1. You are starting with step 1. Right? Step 2, you start again. R. This time you have x1. So b minus ax1. Right? So you can find b minus ax1. Okay, so b minus ax1. So b, you know, it is this, right? 2.02, 3.03 minus ax1, 1, 1, 1, 2. X1 is this, you find it here. So 1.01, 1.01. So if you simplify this, I believe you will get 0, 0. And so if you work it out, you will get 0, 0. So when you get R is equal to 0, you can stop. Right? So when you get R is equal to 0, you can stop. So your real solution is this. Right? So we stop. Right? So the real solution is 1.01, 1.01, which is x1. So this is a improvement of the computed solution. Right? So this is called iterative improvement. Right? So here you start finding residual for every approximation. Solve the system ax equal to b or a e is equal to r, right? So when you are solving, again you will have some approximated solution. So here fortunately you have a real solution, so that's fine. Sometimes you will have approximated solution. So then you improve your previous approximation by adding e and x, and then again you find r, and again you rotate, and you continue until you get a real solution, right? So this is called iterative improvement or iterative refinement technique, right? So not necessarily here you always need to do Gaussian elimination, right? So here, let me write the remark here, right? Right, so because always, right, so because you know that this step you will have at every this line you will have in every step. Step 1 you have this, and suppose if this is not 0, then you have to go to this step, and there is again. So you know that you will have this computation again and again and again. So every time, instead of applying Gaussian elimination, right, you could have used your LU factorization of A, which you already found, right? Because all the time here you will have A. Only this value is going to change, right? So you don't need to worry about B, the right hand side, because LU factorization you have only for A. So if you have this LU factorization, OPA is equal to LU factorization, right? So you can use it here and solve the system, right? Without any computation again and again, right? So that is useful, but here in this example we don't need to do that, but generally you can use it. So this is about improvement of the approximation, right? So that means in a way a method to reduce the error, right? So sometimes you may do one iteration, two iterations to improve the error, right? So this is the technique to improve the results. Right. So now we have seen one technique to improve the error. Right? But in a way to estimate the error, right? In the first year, in the second year numerical analysis, you studied about real, absolute error and relative error. Right. So here also we may estimate by using absolute error and relative error as well. Right. There, when you talk about absolute error, you put absolute value, because if it is just a real number, you can always take the absolute value. But unfortunately, here the error is not a real number; it is a vector, right? Because if you have a 2 cross 2 matrix, your X is a vector with 2 components. If you have a 3 cross 3 matrix, your error or solution is a vector with 3 components. 4 cross 4 matrix, vector with 4 components. So this is the problem. Right? So you have vectors. So you cannot use absolute value directly. So you have to use something else, right, to estimate the absolute value of a vector. So that thing is called norm. So we are going to define a new terminology called norm, which in a way measure the size of a vector. So we call it vector norms. Right? So the measurement we use to measure the size of a vector in place of absolute value is called norm. Right? So because it is vectors, we call it vector norm. So that is a real valued function. Right? So the input is a vector, right? So that is what we mean by this, right? So two with double line bracket, we denote the vector norm, right? So the input is always a vector, right? And the output is a real number, right? It is a real number. Output is a real number. In particular, it is a non-negative real number, right? Greater or equal to 0. So for any vector, vector norm is greater or equal to 0. And if the vector norm is equal to 0, then the vector must be 0 or vice versa. If the vector is 0, then the vector norm is 0. Constant multiple of a vector, the norm is absolute value of that constant times the norm of the vector. And then it will satisfy the triangle inequality. X plus y is less or equal to norm of x plus norm of y. So now you might wonder, how do you define such a function, right? So this is not a hard thing, right? There are different ways to define vector norms. So one simple one is absolute value sum. Okay, so examples. Right, so this be an n vector. So then you can write x with n components, right? So x1, x2, all the way up to xn. Right, so this is what we mean by the vector with n components belongs to Rn, right? So the norm we define, right? So I'm going to use a new notation, subscript 1, because we are using a lot of different norms. We will put different notations for those norms. So this one is called right. So this is basically this. Right. Right. So sum of the absolute value of each component. Right. So this is called absolute sum norm or L1 norm. Right. So this is defined by, you take the individual components of the vector, take the absolute value and sum them together. So you can easily check that this norm, this definition satisfies all these four properties, right? So for this only I will show you how to check, right? Others we will just see the norm, not to check. For this one it is simple, so I will show you. Right, so first one, This you all know. Absolute value of xi is greater or equal to 0 for all xi. So sorry, for all I. Right? So sum is also positive. Right? So because each absolute value is greater or equal to 0, summation will also be greater or equal to 0. Next case. This is 0, right? Clearly this is 0 if and only if right, because of the definition. X1 is this, so if this is 0, this is 0. Right? So your sum of absolute values are 0. So your absolute values are always positive, non-negative values, you know that. So when you sum non-negative values and the sum is equal to 0, then that means each of the component must be 0. Right? So this means right, if summation of absolute values are 0, then means each of the absolute value term should be 0, then only the summation can be 0. If absolute value of a number is 0, then you know that number is 0. Right? So that is the property of absolute value. So that is true for if and only if for all I is equal to 1, 2, up to n. Right? So this is 1, 2, up to n. So now what we have is each component of x is 0. This is 0, this is 0, this is 0, this is 0, all of them are 0. So x should be 0. And so this is depend on if this is 0. So that is the second condition. Third condition, alpha times x, 1 norm of alpha times x. So that is summation of alpha times xi, because when you multiply this by alpha, you multiply each term by alpha. So that is summation of x times alpha. So, but in the absolute value, you can take the summation out. So alpha, absolute value of alpha is common. So you can take it out. When you take it out, you get summation of I running from 1 to n, absolute value of xi. But we define absolute value, summation of absolute value of xi is 1 norm. So this is alpha times 1 norm of. So that is the third condition. Fourth condition, triangle inequality. Okay, triangle inequality. X plus y, and norm of x plus y. So this is same as this. Absolute value of xi plus yi, because xi's are the components of x, and you can define yi as the component of y. So x plus y is xi plus yi, right? But triangle inequality for absolute value, you know that this is lesser equal to summation of I is equal to 1 to n absolute value of xi plus absolute value of yi. So, comma. So that is basically 1 norm plus 1 norm of y. Right? So this is triangle inequality. So similarly, if they define a norm, you can always check whether the certain definition satisfies the norm condition or not, right? But in this course, we will not focus on checking the norm condition, right? So we will only focus on how to compute the norm and how to use the norm. Right? So we will not consider or focus on proving this kind of results, right? Just for your information, I gave you one proof, right? But in general, we will not focus on this kind of things, right? We will only focus on how to compute the norm and how to use the norm. Right? So let me see an example of one norm. Right? And so if you have x here, then you can find the one norm of x. One norm of x is you take the absolute value of the components and add them together. Right? So it is 1 plus absolute value of -1 plus 3. So when you add them together, you get 5. So this is the one norm or L1 norm. And so simply we say one norm, two norm, infinity norm, P norm, right? So in general, you can see this as L1 norm, right? So take the absolute value and sum them together. Similarly, there are other types of norms as well. Right? So now let me define the norms, not to prove them, but use examples. Okay, so next norm is L2 norm or Euclidean norm. Right, so how do you define Euclidean norm? It's like this. Right, so you take the absolute value of the individual terms, sum them together, and then take the square root. Right, to the power half power, so you take the square root. Right, so this is basically this square root of sum of I running from 1 to n xi square. Right, so example, same one, 1 minus 1 3. So now 2 norm is square root of 1 squared plus minus 1 squared plus 3 squared. So 9, 10, 11. So that is square root of 11. So now you can see that when I change the way I define the norm, the values I get for norm is different, right? So that is important. That is why this notation is important, right? If I change the norm, the value I get for norm is different, right? When I change to 1 to 2, the value is different. Here I get 5, there I get square root of 11 because the way I define is different. Another type, infinity norm. So L infinity norm or maximum norm. Right, so here we use infinity as a subscript. It's basically maximum among x1, x2, xn. Right, so we will take maximum among these values. Or in a way, this is maximum of 1 less or equal to I less or equal to n xi. Right? So in this example, if I want to find infinity norm, this I have to take maximum among 1, absolute value of -1, absolute value of 3. So this value is clearly 3. Right? So this is called vector norm. Right? So for a vector norm, right? So because now you are looking at a system of linear equations, so you have vectors and matrices as well. Right? So we have to. Hello. இப்போ வருவீங்களா கம்பல்சரிக்கு ஒரு 10 நிமிஷத்துல வரேன். Okay, so what we have is now vector norm, right? So in the next class, what we are going to see is we are going to transform this vector norm into matrix, because matrix is different from vector. Vector you have one column only, but matrix you have rows and columns. So you cannot use a vector norm into a matrix. So for a matrix you will have a different norm called matrix norm, right? So in the next class we will define what do we call by a matrix norm, right? And then based on that we will try to estimate the absolute error and the relative error, right? So I will talk about that in the next class.